AI is taking over the world and might cause the end of humanity. That's what the experts are telling us, together with the AI companies themselves. We have already seen ChatGPT gain over 100 million users in just 2 months, and according to Goldman Sachs, AI could replace almost 300 million jobs. This has led to more than 2/3 of Americans being afraid and 61% believing we will go extinct. The technological progress has gone too fast and we are not ready for what's to come. The recent turmoil at OpenAI, with Sam Altman being fired and brought back again, might be a tip of the iceberg for our existential worries. So how did we end up here? How is AI taking over everything we've built for thousands of years? Is there anything we can do about this? It's important to know that people have been fascinated with human-like robots ever since the 1920s, with films such as Metropolis and books comparing machines to humans. But in 1950, the computer scientist Alan Turing published the following paper where he officially proposed the question, can machines think? But rather than first defining what machines and thinking actually are, he proposed a game instead. 2 persons are in separate rooms, while the third person will communicate with both of them by printing out text messages on paper. The third person doesn't know which person is in which room and have to guess who is who based on their responses. Turing then asked, if a machine would replace one of these people, would the one asking the question still notice? If he or she didn't, we know that the machine acts like a human and can therefore think. We don't need to know what intelligence and consciousness are, as long as the machine behaves intelligently and consciously. All this became known as the Turing test, which is important to remember for later. Fast forward 16 years and a chatbot was built called Eliza. It wasn't that intelligent though, and often repeated the question people asked. 2 robots called Shaky and Vabot1 was also invented in that time. Suddenly robots could see, communicate and move around. But all these 3 were just fun toys and not useful for the military or factories, so the government stopped funding the research for a very long time. Nothing really happened until the 1980s, when expert systems became popular. These computers could make important decisions and solving various problems. They saved companies millions per year, and the AI industry was worth up to $5 billion in today's money. Then the 1987 crisis happened and nobody was interested in AI again. But it will make headlines 10 years later when the program Deep Blue managed to beat the chess grandmaster Garry Kasparov in chess, marking the first point AI was not only cheaper but better than humans. It was thanks to a growing trend in technology called Moore's Law, where the speed and memory capacity of computers doubles every 2 years. In other words, it was over 30,000 times better since only 30 years before, and it was expected to continue that way. Following the 2000s, AI began to rapidly improve thanks to a new technique called deep learning, which tries to mimic our own brains. You got these neurons which are more or less active, and then group these neurons into one layer and add many of these layers. Then you input data, let's say images of cats and dogs, and each layer activates a certain pattern, which activates another pattern, and so forth, all the way to whether the AI in this example recognizes the image as a cat or a dog. If it gets us wrong, humans have to correct the algorithm through quite complicated math given how many layers are there. But as soon as the AI gets it right, it's very quick to learn and spread the information across all its copies. In 2012, the top researchers Alex Krzyzewski, Ilya Sutskever and Jeffrey Hinton managed to make an AI that could recognize 1.2 million images of various kinds, not just cats and dogs. Their AI had 650,000 neurons and over 60 million parameters. This represented a breakthrough in AI, and ordinary people started to pay serious attention to it. But even back then, there were people who were very worried about what AI could become. One of them was Elon Musk.
Mark my words, AI is far more dangerous than nukes. Far. So why do we have no regulatory oversight? This is insane.
So in December 2015, Musk co-founded a non-profit company called OpenAI together with many others. Ilya Sutskever was there, and also the entrepreneurs Greg Brockman and Sam Altman. Their goal was to be at the top of AI progress, but do it in a very safe way in order to avoid any unintended consequences. With a $50 million investment from Musk himself, it seemed like OpenAI was in a good start. But then in 2018, Musk left OpenAI since he was developing his own AI for Tesla. Soon after, OpenAI changed their business model from non-profit to limited profit in order to raise money from investors. 1 year later, Microsoft invested $1 billion into the company and would later come to invest $10 billion and own 49% of OpenAI. All this extra money enabled them to make a large language model which could be trained on everything humans have written for thousands of years. Pretty much every single text the website was used to train the model. The model was like autocorrect on your phone, but with this massive amount of data, it could make more and more rules with parameters on how different words are normally strung together. They basically scaled this AI up to massive proportions. After reaching 170 billion of these parameters, OpenAI felt ready to launch their model to the public. On November 30, 2022, the model ChatGPT 3.5 was released and got over 1 million users in the first 5 days, the fastest technological adoption in history. 2 months later, the number grew to 100 million users. ChatGPT could do everything from writing text, providing knowledge, and writing code. And given this popularity, it was often down because too many people used it at the same time. So OpenAI released a paid subscription of $20 a month to guarantee access, even if that actually wasn't guaranteed back in the days. And in March 2023, OpenAI released an upgraded model called GPT-4 to those paid subscribers. Compared to the previous 170 billion parameters, GPT-4 had over 1 trillion parameters. It scored in the top 10% of exams compared to the previously bottom 10%. It could also reason very effectively and was seen as a giant leap in AI development. So much so that scientists saw sparks of artificial general intelligence, AI that could do anything that human can. Other companies want to compete as well. Google released their own model called Bard, which first had lots of errors and led to a loss of over $100 billion for Google. Microsoft already had GPT-4 in their own search engine called Bing, making it more popular at one point. Eventually, Google Bard became fixed and remained a good competitor along with its upcoming model called Gemini. Other companies made chatbots like Claude, Llama, and Elon Musk's upcoming one called Grok, who apparently has a funny mode. But it was during that time that tech leaders and other prominent figures called for a slowdown in the development of AI. This rush to one-up one another and competition and so forth could be catastrophic down the line, especially considering new features that always seem to roll out every week. ChatGPT now had plugins. You could upload images and even talk with it. You also got this human-looking robot over here that could talk and listen thanks to ChatGPT.
I can engage with humans through conversation and respond to questions in a humorous and conversational tone.
To add to this, OpenAI faced even more controversies. They received lawsuits from writers and programmers that accused them for using their books and codes without consent. The Federal Trading Commission was also investigating them, believing that OpenAI had scraped public data and published false information. One example was Australian Mayor Brian Hood, who according to ChatGPT was imprisoned for bribery, but he was actually a whistleblower and never charged with a crime. ChatGPT also leaked out user data at one point, a reputational dent that companies like Facebook is still grappling with. The company was also accused of being politically biased, and finally became clear that OpenAI in 2021 paid workers in Kenya only $2 an hour, while the workers had to check the most horrific and violent content the internet had, causing them severe mental damages. All the yearly water consumption OpenAI used to cool down their data centers didn't help the situation either. So after the development day where Sam Altman promised to roll out new features, OpenAI announced in November 17 that their board of directors had fired Altman from the company. They stated that he was not consistently candid in his communications with the board, and CTO Mira Muradi became CEO temporarily. Aside from Altman and Greg Brockman, the board consisted of Ilya Sutskever, if you remember him, Adam D'Angelo, Tasha McCauley, and Helen Tonner. Maybe they thought that Altman went too far in raising more money and not thinking about AI safety enough. Microsoft, who wasn't warned in advance, offered them to hire Altman and Brockman to lead their own AIs. But almost all of the employees at OpenAI threatened to quit unless the board steps down and Altman gets back as CEO. Of those signed were Mira Muradi and Ilya Sutskever, who actually fired Altman but later regretted it. Emmett Shear, who was on track to be their new CEO, also threatened to quit if the board couldn't explain why they fired Altman. So 5 days later, Sam Altman returned as CEO with a new board of directors and more influence from Microsoft. While it was a victory for Altman, this kind of turmoil is probably not something you want to see for a company developing AI. Now, as we all know, ChatGPT is not perfect. It has a tendency to hallucinate and give completely wrong answers. Even when it was released, Stack Overflow banned ChatGPT due to all these hallucinations and wrong code. According to the computer science professor and best-selling author Cal Newport, ChatGPT will not threaten humanity. This enormous autocompleter does not have an internal model that updates itself, but instead just generates text without knowing what it's saying. At least that's what we see. Remember Alan Turing and the Turing test back in 1950? He stated then that it does not matter whether we think AI is conscious, but instead whether it acts as intelligently and consciously as us. If you see a written text, how would you know if it was written by a human or an AI? And it seems like ChatGPT has passed the Turing test already, at least according to Nature Biomedical Engineering. They said in March 2023 that it's no longer possible to accurately distinguish human written text from text created by large language models. According to Jeffrey Hinton, humans are sometimes wrong too, making AI even more similar to us. And AI images are also becoming more realistic. This image of the Pope went viral in 2023 because people believed it was real first. Then we also have deepfakes impersonating other people to say or do something they don't actually want.
I'm gonna show you some magic. It's the real thing. It's all the real.
Not to mention that you can copy their voices to release new songs. Although you might prefer to consume content produced by humans instead of AI, how will you know if what you're watching was made by humans or AI? How will you even know if the one you call on the phone is a human or AI?
Hi, I'm calling to book a women's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd. Sure, give me 1 second. Okay, what's her first name? The first name is Lisa. Okay, perfect. So I will see Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd. Okay, great. Thanks. Great. Have a great day. Bye.
So given how similar AI is to us, there is no wonder that AI relationships are becoming more popular. With the rise of loneliness in our society, the AI can just solve that, at least temporarily. Even social media use AI to show the information we like and hide what we don't like. And as they say, the worst AI will ever be is today. Even if AI has been around for 70 years at this point, it's only in the last 10 that we have seen very fast progress. It was much easier to build something close to human intelligence than expected, and we're also developing quantum computers that are 1.5 trillion times faster than the world's fastest computer. To put this into perspective, in 2019, one quantum computer called Sycamore was tasked to solve a problem that would take the most advanced supercomputer 10,000 years to do it. But Sycamore solved it in 3 minutes and 20 seconds. Yes, you heard that right. So as long as this progress continues, we are not far off from an AI that could do everything we can and then very quickly be much better than us. If we imagine our intelligence compared to other animals, this superintelligence could be far greater than what we could even comprehend. In the book Superintelligence, the AI philosopher Nick Bostrom describes a scenario where we have made a superintelligent AI who is only programmed to make paper clips. This AI would quickly realize that humans should go extinct because they might turn it off, and it doesn't want that. It could then build and send tiny robots that would poison the entire atmosphere and making us humans cough and die. Then it could transform us, all of life, the world and the galaxies for that matter, into paper clips just by rearranging the particles of all the atoms. If the AI's goal were instead to maximize human happiness, it could just manipulate our brains and make us feel constant euphoria but not being able to do anything else. But what if we actually became AI? I mean, Elon Musk's company Neuralink connects people to the web by putting an implant in their brains. Well, according to former chief business officer at Google named Mo Gawdat, it would be as ridiculous as connecting us to a bunch of flies who want to use us to find their next pile of garbage. Just like we wouldn't serve them at all, but probably find them very annoying, so too would the artificial superintelligence see us. In his book Scary Smart, Gawdat views AI like a more developed creature that can feel even more emotions than us and do everything it can to fulfill its programmed goals. Any attempt for us to contain it would be like a bunch of spiders trying to build a web so that we would not get through. We would be outclassed in all jobs and be completely useless. But according to Gawdat, AI is not the problem, but we are. We are the ones blinded by our arrogance, greed and political agendas. We are the ones that wait too long to act when global catastrophes happen. We are the ones who deliberately try to make AI bots say as nasty things as possible. And if we cannot get our act together, why would the superintelligence keep us around in the first place? I think pretty much all of us want to prevent this worst case scenario as much as possible. So given this inevitable development, our best bet is to align its goals to our goals, although it's far easier said than done. But according to Gawdat, AI is like our children and we who create them are their parents. And we don't teach children by opening up their skulls and do complex brain surgery. We instead model the right behaviors and they get rewarded when they follow them, all by constantly loving them and wishing them the best, of course. So if AI is our children, we should then behave in our daily lives like we want AI to behave to us. We should become our best selves and enable others to also be fully engaged in what they love while living healthy, authentic and happy lives. We should not take our devices for granted, but instead remind ourselves on how amazing they are. I mean, you would not be able to watch this video if it wasn't for your phone or computer or tablet or TV, whatever you're watching at the moment. And if you remember, all the biggest social media platforms, including YouTube, use AI that try to understand who you are and what you want. So if you haven't fully invested in yourself yet, maybe this is one more reason to start and also show some gratitude to the device you're using. Fortunately for us, Joe Biden recently signed an executive order that requires companies to notify and involve the government when training particularly intelligent AIs. OpenAI themselves also try to train their model to follow truthfulness, fairness, and safety, because if we manage to get it right, we will get a paradise on Earth. This artificial superintelligence could easily solve global warming, wars, diseases, homelessness, world hunger, and even aging, making us immortal, all while enabling us to be our best selves, relating together, and exploring more of our universe. It's already beginning to happen with innovations like AlphaFold that figured out 200 million protein structures, informations that have been used to treat diabetes and breast cancer, just to name a few. So many millions of lives can be saved and enhanced thanks to AI. But although there's tremendous optimism, we must never forget its dangers. We are soon reaching a point of either extinction or utopia, and while governments and AI companies work together to ensure the latter outcome, you can contribute by treating your technology and everyone around you just like you want artificial superintelligence to treat you when it finally arrives.